Each week on Culinary Confidential, Christina Cates, a seasoned foodie who has worked at some of New York City's top restaurants, will share her passion for the culinary world. Whether you're a professional chef, a restaurant enthusiast, or a lover of good food, Christina dives into the heart of hospitality, exploring the trends, triumphs, and challenges facing the food service profession. And you won't want to miss her chats with some of the most interesting and influential industry voices. And now, please take your seat at the table as Culinary Confidential with Christina Cates starts now, exclusively on AM 970, The Answer.
Hello, and welcome to the show. This is Culinary Confidential, where food, drink, culture, and the people shaping the industry all collide. This show is produced in association with my dear friend, Lucas A. Ferrara. Tonight's episode is one I've been especially excited about because we're talking about bourbon. But not just what's in the glass. We're talking about who is behind it, why it matters, and how one woman is carving out space in an industry that hasn't always made room. Our guest tonight is Dee Robinson, CEO of Robinson Hill Incorporated and founder of Good Trouble Bourbon, a name that alone tells you this brand is about more than just great whiskey. It's about legacy, representation, and doing things with purpose. If you're not sure what the difference is between whiskey and bourbon, let me explain. Whiskey is the big umbrella. It's any distilled spirit made from grain, corn, rye, barley, or wheat, and aged in wood. It can be made all over the world, from Ireland to Scotland to Japan, and each place has its own rules and flavor traditions. Bourbon, on the other hand, is America's native whiskey. To be called bourbon, it must be made in the United States, contain at least 51% corn, be distilled to specific proof standards, and, most importantly, be aged in brand new charred oak barrels. That's what gives bourbon its signature notes of vanilla, caramel, and toasted oak. So while all bourbon is whiskey, not all whiskey is bourbon. Bourbon is a very specific, very regulated style that reflects American agriculture, craftsmanship, and history. Before we get into Dee's story, let's set the stage with a few numbers, because bourbon isn't just a drink, it's a powerhouse of American culture and commerce. The U.S. bourbon industry contributes over $9 billion annually to the American economy. Kentucky alone produces 95% of the world's bourbon, aging more than 12 million barrels at any given time. That's nearly 3 barrels for every resident of the state. Bourbon exports have more than doubled in the last decade, and global demand growing year over year, especially in premium and small batch categories. And yet, despite all that growth, less than 2% of U.S. distilleries are Black-owned, and an even smaller percentage are led by women. That's where Dee Robinson comes in. Dee Robinson is an entrepreneur, a brand builder, and a disruptor in the best sense of the word. She represents a new generation of spirits leaders who understand that today's consumers care just as much about values as they do about flavor profiles. In this hour, we're going to talk about what it actually takes to launch a bourbon brand in a crowded, highly regulated space, why representation in spirits matter more than ever, how bourbon connects agriculture, history, and craftsmanship, and how Good Trouble Bourbon fits into the evolving American whiskey story. So pour yourself something special, settle in, and let's get into it, because this conversation is smooth, complex, and has a little heat on the finish. Dee Robinson, welcome to the show. This is episode 76 of Culinary Confidential, and I have not covered the topic of bourbon yet, and I'm so very glad it is you that is here to talk about it tonight.
Well, thank you so very much for having me, and there is nothing more that I love talking about than some good food and some good bourbon.
I think we're going to get ourselves into a little trouble here tonight. What do you say?
I say a little good trouble is what we're going to get ourselves into.
I like it.
Sure.
I like it. All right. I do have to say, though, I was reading through your bio the other night in preparation for the show, and I couldn't believe how much you've accomplished throughout your career, how much you're a part of, and how much you do. Where do you find the time for all of it?
Well, first of all, thank you for that. Well, my mom said a couple of things to me, and she said, well, first of all, no one ever said it would be easy. So I sort of approach life that way with anything that I do, and just do one thing at a time. And then when you lead with purpose, and so a lot of the things is that I get an idea in my head and I decide, oh, this is something I think I should do. And next thing, I'm moving on. So I don't know if I'm a serial entrepreneur. Some would say that,
I would say
but
yes.
but you know what? I actually think everything that I do connects in some way, and it's just iteration to the next thing, and we're building on things to figure out how to touch more lives. So it's also all about having an impact, truly.
And you truly are. All right, before we go into the deep dive of Good Trouble Bourbon, tell me about your company, Robinson Hill Incorporated, which is the concessions management firm specializing in over 60 retail outlets and restaurants at airports and unconventional venues. That's really cool. Like, how did you even decide to go that route?
Well, it has to really start with my corporate life. I went to business school. I was at Kellogg, and then spent time at Johnson & Johnson, and then Leo Burnett. And what I will always say to any audience I speak to is that oftentimes, you first of all should only stay where you're valued. And more importantly, when you have an idea, just go for it. And in this case, I knew that I wanted to do more. I had this bug in me to go and try something. And of course, many people thought I lost my mind. And I will say that many will always think you're lost your mind when you're starting something new. And most time people are telling you what they can't do. It's not what you can do. You got to take a pause in that, because there's so many ideas that I think just get squashed or dreams get deferred because they listened to someone else who didn't know their X and their Y. And for me, it was just recognize I was in this corporate job and I was working so hard. And one night I remember after working 30 days, I literally said, I wonder what my hourly rate is. So the salary might appear to be attractive, but then next thing you know, you start thinking about how many hours you put in. It's an hourly rate. You're just like, why am I doing this?
Yeah.
And I had that moment, and I said, I just might as well go work for fast food or go try to something on my own. So the risk wasn't as great as it might have appeared. And I think for all of those who are thinking about, new ventures, I always also said that it was riskier for me to stay than to go out on my own.
Did you do a soft launch, though, like stay in your corporate job where it was safe and you had that consistent income while trying to launch this new business?
I tell everyone, don't do it the way I did, because I jumped. And I really did. And it's also part of what led to my book. But I did literally decide I wanted to go out on my own, and you never think you have, you never have enough money that you think you have. And I got to a point where things looked really bleak, and but it was also one of the best things that could have happened to me in my life, in that I was struggling. I didn't have a way to pay rent, and I realized I was getting in my own way. It was my fears getting in the way, because I said, I know that's what I wanted to do. And then there was a moment when I said, oh, I think you have to go get a job. And it was in that moment I said, no, I left the job to go do something more. And I needed to figure out how to make it work. And so I realized that I was in my own way, my own self-talk, limiting talk. And once I sort of made that big shift from fear to courage, things just started to work for me. And right. I just dedicated myself.
Did you have a mentor growing up?
You know what? I get that question a lot, and I'm going to say yes and no. I got to always give, credit to my mother, because I watched her. Many of us had moms and parents who worked multiple jobs, and they didn't see that being entrepreneurial. My mom, in her case, was that I got 4 kids to feed. So watching her manage through adversity and challenge and all of those things was the best lesson of all, and mentor. And of course, she also had faith in me. And then throughout, it's interesting, I just got an award in Dallas last week, and there were women on the stage with me. And most of us were saying that we did not have mentors. And it's probably why I spend more time mentoring. Sometimes we're the first in the room to do the things that we're doing, and they're not people who are reaching out to help. And but I've learned, too, to find out who can help me. Even when I was getting into the restaurant space, leaving that corporate job, I worked for free at restaurants. I asked chefs if I could go and cook with them. I love to cook, by the way, it's my passion. So that's why I said food and bourbon is a great combination. But I was willing to go out there and work for free just to learn and recognize that I should have been paying them because I was learning, right? So I was always willing to take the chances to work really hard, to learn what I didn't know, ask a lot of questions, or follow people that I admired. And so they became my sort of remote mentors, if you will. But then over time, you started understanding what that means, and more people entered my life. But it was fascinating to hear all these women on stage because we were so new at what we were doing that none of us had, former mentors in our lives.
Oh, I like that. I like that a lot. And I love how much you do mentor so many people now. There's so many people that look up to you. Even Shayna, who's our mutual friend, who, she supports this show so much. She could not say enough about Dee Robinson. And she told me, she's like, you're going to love her. Even before the show, she called me and she's like, is it today? Are you having her on today? And I was like, yeah. She's like, I'm telling you, Christina, she's going to be the best guest you ever had.
Oh,
you leave an impression with people, Dee.
Well, no, people leave one with me. And so, we got a responsibility. And if we really think about that, when we get these gifts and opportunities, the best way to multiply them is share it, right? I mean, why? And that pie expands. I've never had a limiting sort of mentality. People got to understand that when I share with you, guess what? There's a multiplier effect. And then if you help one, I also believe this, that you'll help another. And so the power of one is amazing. And I also have, I'd say this is my new purpose. I want to shorten the runway to success for others. I do not want them to take as long as I did to get where I am today.
How long did it take you?
Well, listen, my company is 30 years this year, because it's crazy to even imagine.
Huge accomplishment.
Thank you for that. And, you just keep your head down, but it's just one step at a time. And here we are. I would say 30 years is some of the things that I'm learning now, lessons learned. I can only imagine what they could have been, had I known those lessons. And, like one thing I would share to everyone is to say yes more to things. I think fear keeps us away from our dreams. And I always say the other side of fear are all the rewards and the riches you seek. And it took me all to get through all of that, to not let microaggressions impact me versus just saying, hey, let them underestimate you and just go do you. You. Nobody knows you like you.
Right.
And yet we let all this outside noise interfere, and they have deposited while you're sitting there doing that, and there's no return on investment, and you thinking negative or angry that someone did X. Learning that sometimes it's just simply business and they could care less about me, and I just got to go do what I know how to do.
That's right. All right, should we get into some good trouble? What do you think?
Let's do it. Yeah, I like that.
All right, let's talk bourbon. Take us back, Dee. When was the moment when Good Trouble Bourbon went from an idea to an actual mission?
So I want to start by saying something else about my journey, and that is I have learned to be quiet, and I've learned to meditate. And because I do believe that all the answers that we want are out there for us if we're willing to just be still and hear. And so I would say my book is that way. Most of the things that I have developed have come to me in those moments when I've just been quiet or when I'm in seeking answers. And so Good Trouble is no different. And I had this crazy idea in meditation. And I remember, thinking, I could make bourbon. So I need to start with one story about Good Trouble, which is this. I knew I had to honor John Lewis and his legacy and what that meant. And he asked us all to get into good trouble, necessary trouble. I had to honor that. Good Trouble, though, back to my mother, it has a lot to do with her. I had an older sister, Pearl, and when twins showed up, I'm a twin. 10 years later, my mom used to say, the only kind of trouble we could get in was good trouble because my sister got in all the rest. And she would say all of her gray hair, everything was because of my sister. So I had been drinking bourbon, but I went to a tasting. And I remember thinking, this is phenomenal, the complexity of the ranges of bourbon that I tasted. At one point, I thought I wanted to be in the wine space and research that. And I love to drink wine, Big Bold Reds, but bourbon just kept speaking to me. And so I'm a curious sort. And so I decided to figure out how they made it. So I decided to study craft distilling. Then when I did that, I was like, well, why not make it? And so one thing led to the next. And, here we are talking about, award-winning Good Trouble bourbon, and could not be more delighted. And there are just so many stories on this journey, too, because I will say that many people try to get in the way of it. Just so you know, we've had people who try to do various things from, taking bourbons or not necessarily validating you because you happen to be a woman, in my case, woman of color.
Right.
But I knew one thing. I knew I wanted to make great bourbon. I knew I wanted to make it in Kentucky. I researched a lot of different distillers and landed on Jacob Call, who's an 8th generation master distiller. We were slow to market by going out and validating what we already knew. We knew we were going to make great bourbon, and we had. And we spent a year doing that. And I think it served us well. I get a chance to talk to you about it.
I know. This is so exciting. We have to get this bourbon into Gibson's restaurant group and all their stores, right, out in Chicago.
You know what? We would love that. We we want to own Chicago. We want to be Chicago's bourbon. We have such great partners like Benny's, for instance, Stoney Beverage, Annis. On the retail side, they leaned in, and Benny's in particular. That's like the holy grail in the retail space, and they accepted us early. And I think it's Benny's, and it's also our distributor who was our cheerleader from the very early starts, and say that we're one of their most successful launches, and that means the world to us. We are in some of the top restaurants. We have an exclusive that's at the Drake Hotel. We know that there's an opportunity to build on our on-premise side of the business, and we're working on a really big deal right now for distribution in a major venue. We're now in Bally's in Chicago, and then they're partnering and allowing us to go into all of their casinos. So it's truly through partnership, and we just love that we celebrate not just the bourbon, but all the folks who believed in us. And so, I'm always talking about, our partners out there. Purple Pig, when I showed up, Rogers Park Social, all of these guys have just leaned in, and we're thrilled. And, Modern Luxury Magazine, I can keep going on about how Chicago has poured love into us.
And Chicago is such a vibrant dining scene now. It only makes sense that they have this high-level quality bourbon as their feature, too, because you're from Chicago, born and raised, right?
Not born and raised, and that's an interesting thing because I had to break through in early days. My adult life has been there. Went to my first job out of college was at Northern Trust, and then I went to Kellogg Business School, but ever since then, I've been in Chicago. I left once to come back. I think the third time was a charm, but I consider Chicago home. I was born in Cleveland, Ohio, went to boarding school. Most of my living years have actually been spent in Chicago.
I love it. All right, Dee, guess what? We need to go to our first commercial break. When we get back, I need to know more about Good Trouble bourbon, the flavor profiles, the tasting notes about it, the process, and I know you have those answers. So stay tuned. You're listening to Culinary Confidential with Christina Cates on AM 970 The Answer.
Over the last 30 years, Newman Ferrara, a New York City law firm, has evolved into a national practice focused on real estate, commercial, litigation, civil rights, class actions, and other complex litigation, representing many of the city's largest property owners, managing agents, and thousands of tenants. Newman Ferrara handles some of the nation's most significant class actions and civil rights matters. Newman Ferrara at 1250 Broadway in New York City. Go online to newmanferrara.com. That's newmanferrara.com. Listen to the firm's name partner, Lucas Ferrara, every Saturday at 10 a.m. on Dottie Herman's longest-running real estate radio program, Eye on Real Estate on AM 970. A real estate lawyer for 35 years, Lucas is a professor at New York Law School and is also a published author with books on real estate and New York's landlord-tenant law. Tune in Saturdays at 10 a.m. to hear Lucas's unique perspective and advice on Eye on Real Estate.
Welcome back to Culinary Confidential with Christina Cates on AM 970. The Answer.
Welcome back to the show. If you're just joining us, we're talking bourbon, bold moves, and breaking barriers with Dee Robinson, founder of Good Trouble Bourbon. Before the break, we got into the origin of the story. Now we're diving deeper into what it takes to actually build a bourbon brand from the ground up. Dee, welcome back to the show.
Thank you.
All right, tell me about this bourbon, though. Like, what's it taste like? Because honestly, I don't drink a lot of bourbon. I'm kind of a bourbon virgin.
Well, you know what? You're actually the kind of person I like to talk to.
Ooh,
and
let's talk.
you know why? First of all, one of the things that I wanted to solve for with this bourbon, a lot of people said they didn't like bourbon because it ran hot. And I wanted to solve for that. And Jacob and I, when we were trying to figure this all out, and I think we've done that, and I think that's why you get those beautiful vanilla and caramel notes. And, when people taste it, they'll instantly say, man, this is really smooth. And then particularly with women, I don't really drink it. And then just like we're talking with you, when they taste it, they're like, that's really good. And I also talk about what I call the bourbon journey. And I said that men walk down the stairs and women walk up. And what I mean by that is that men typically enter in right on the neat side, then maybe there's a drop of water, there's a large cube, and cocktails, right? Well, women oftentimes enter through the cocktail side. And so you got cocktails, and then they step up the ladder, and then they might then lead to neat. And so we love being able to think about our customer base in that way and build around it. I love creating cocktails for the bourbon, and it's also ideal because we're 92 proof, and the higher the proof, as we all know, actually makes for a better cocktail. So I always tell people when they go home to try a cocktail and they wonder why it might not taste as well, it might be because of the quality of the bourbon that they're using. But pay attention to the proof. It'll actually have a big impact. And then ours is just because of the balance. I call this a high rye. We're 70% corn and 21% rye, but that balance is what helps create all those flavors, and that's just enough heat there to sort of keep it spicy, but also warm and smooth.
I love it. How involved are you in the blending and flavor development process?
So I have to give Jacob the credit for that, but what he'll tell you is that it was us really going into, and I wish you could see my cabinet. I was like, yes, no, there's a lot of samples. And people don't understand that even though you might use one distillery, where it's in the rick house matters. And that's why you see the select barrels. You got to go out there and start thinking about how, you're going to pick, how you're going to blend. And Jacob and I were just sort of going back and forth. And I'm sure he was finally happy when I settled on something. And there was one that I actually really loved, and then found out that we couldn't get enough of the barrels that I wanted to make it. But being able to be that select in how you pull it together, that's where my engagement is, and just being able to taste and work with him. I have another one that I'm working with him on, and so I have a 9.5-year-old that we're going to rebarrel and make something really special. And then I'm excited, too, that we're going to create my own mash bill as well. So we're really going to go in there and tweak. But because I love the space, and I think it's also why Jacob and I connected. We say we connected on kitchens. His is a little bigger than mine. But I love the process because it's both art and science. Yeah. This is probably what has really led me to be so passionate about making great bourbon, is when you truly understand the nuances of creating something really great. And by studying it, it helped as well, because I had developed my own palate. I knew what I was trying to solve for, and it was easy to work with him. And I think one of the most, one of the compliments we got, I love when people say this newcomer, Good Trouble, is showing up, because we have been beating a lot of the major brands in some of the testing. Last year we got a gold medal. As you know, San Francisco World Spirits is the most prestigious of all blind tasting. So for us to come out with a go couldn't be more exciting.
Congratulations.
Thank you. And then we got Forbes saying we were one of the best under $50. Those are just validation points, but my joy is hearing what the customer says about it when they take a drink of it. And so I also love teaching people how to drink bourbon. So I want them to, understand the nose. I want them to open up. I always tell them when they put it up there to open their mouth so they can actually get in more of the aromas. And then take a moment to just savor it. And that whole appreciation just leads to more enjoyment for anyone. And I believe we should always ask and get what we want. So we say get in good trouble is our mission. Ask for it when you get to your bar. Look for it when you go to the retailer. But ask for what you want. And what I mean by this, too, if you just say, I want a margarita, they're going to give you a margarita. It's going to be the well. I want people to, not just about the bourbon, any spirit, know what you like and ask for what you want. It's the same thing with great food. We get a chance to choose where we go, where there's a great meal. I want a great meal. I want a great experience when I sit down to eat. And we should be more intentional about the things that we invite into our lives.
Oh, that's great advice. All right. What kind of consumer are you seeing gravitate toward Good Trouble bourbon?
Well, the best part has just been the male bourbon connoisseurs. And what's been fascinating, I have a new release out and I'll tell you about it in a moment, but the men love being able to take it to other men and say, have you discovered this? Because, there's always that competition, like I got wine on you, I know something you don't know. And so the fact that we started out wanting to make sure that they loved it first, because it was important. It was another validation point, right, that we were making good bourbon. But then as it evolved, I wanted it to be inclusive. So look, I brought and did this project for one reason. I wanted to use bourbon as a tool. So I don't say we're a bourbon company, by the way. I think we're building a cultural platform. We tell stories of hope and courage, that I want people to be the change that they want to see in the world. This is really what Good Trouble is about. And then when we come together, whether we break bread, when we drink, when we listen to music, in those moments, we are more alike than we're different. And that really was the premise of this brand. And how are we going to bring people together? And so I really want to celebrate the doers, the dreamers, and the troublemakers. And I want to demonstrate these examples of people in the world. And like you're doing on your show, is helping people understand that there are people out like me out there doing things. Somebody's going to watch this and say, I hope that, I can do this too. And that's all this really is about, is being able to demonstrate that I think everyone deserves to be anywhere their dreams take them. And so by me doing what I do, if I can inspire somebody, even just one, as I mentioned earlier, then I've done my job.
I love it. How long is the bourbon aged?
So in the one that you have, it's an interesting story. On the bottle is actually, the label says 4 years. It's actually older than that. It's almost a year older than it says on the label. And as I mentioned to you, we got delayed when there was some efforts to take some of the barrels and all of that. So so this is over 4 years. The next one we have out is close to 6. It's beautiful. It's called Trouble and Blues. There's only 445 bottles of it, and I believe we're almost sold out.
Of course you are.
Thank you for that. But it's so funny. We did a tasting, and people were like, "Oh my goodness!" I have to do a count because we also created this beautiful collectible. And so I wanted to celebrate Chicago blues. Buddy Guy has asked us to help him keep blues alive. And so if you see the bottle, it's absolutely beautiful. It's Buddy's guitar, which his signature is polka dots, and the strings turn into the wind of Chicago and the skyline. It's 100 proof. Like I said, it's over 6, and it's absolutely an amazing, amazing bourbon. And I'm so excited. We're sure we're probably going to do a Trouble and Blues too, because it's so successful. But each variation and limited edition is always tied to a cause or a purpose. And in this case, celebrating 100 years of blues in Chicago.
Dee, before we head to our last commercial break, I do want to ask, What were the biggest obstacles you faced entering the spirits industry?
I think people just underestimating who we are and our drive and determination because, as I mentioned, we had a partnership early on, and then another company had stepped in, and they didn't understand that I had the kind of rich understanding of, bourbon trackers and understanding, the commitments that we had from the company. And I went to, in fault, I have to give, Discus and Chris Schwanger some credit to helping me, but we had to fight for the barrels that had been allocated to us. I did have to reposition the bourbon because we had entered knowing it would be one price, and then they took the prices up on us. And so, but again, you can't let somebody else squash your dream. I was determined. And, it was just one thing after the next. But when somebody says this way, you go the other way. I mean, it's just an obstacle. And I think that's what the world is just built around, right? And sometimes it just tests us because it'll help us to figure out how hard and how important this is to us. And I certainly did fight, and it delayed us for a couple of years, but it just meant I had to reposition the brand. And so we're super premium bourbon. Yes, the cost structure was different than we initially imagined, but that didn't mean that the dream ended.
I love it. All right, when we get back, though, I'm going to want to know how you built such credibility against some of these legacy brands in the industry. So stay tuned. You're listening to Culinary Confidential with Christina Cates on AM 970 The Answer.
Over the last 30 years, Newman Ferrara, a New York City law firm, has evolved into a national practice focused on real estate, commercial, litigation, civil rights, class actions, and other complex litigation, representing many of the city's largest property owners, managing agents, and thousands of tenants. Newman Ferrara handles some of the nation's most significant class actions and civil rights matters. Newman Ferrara at 1250 Broadway in New York City. Go online to newmanferrara.com. That's newmanferrara.com. Listen to the firm's name partner, Lucas Ferrara, every Saturday at 10 a.m. on Dottie Herman's longest-running real estate radio program, Eye on Real Estate on AM 970. A real estate lawyer for 35 years, Lucas is a professor at New York Law School and is also a published author with books on real estate and New York's landlord-tenant law. Tune in Saturdays at 10 a.m. to hear Lucas's unique perspective and advice on Eye on Real Estate.
Welcome back to Culinary Confidential with Christina Cates on AM 970, The Answer.
Okay, we're back. And if this conversation is making you rethink what's in your glass, you're not alone. We're continuing our conversation with Dee Robinson of Good Trouble Bourbon, now shifting toward impact, legacy, and where the bourbon industry is headed next. Dee, welcome back to the show.
Thank you.
All right, I just mentioned this before we went to the break. How did you approach building credibility with your brand in a category that's, it's dominated by legacy brands?
Well, again, when you just set out to do good, and we say be good and do good is really what we're about our mission. And I knew from day one that I wanted to make great bourbon, period. And so I just followed that North Star. And, and then the rest of the works, I always talk about, again, back to food and restaurants, right? The food is the star, the experience is the wow. And so our job was to make sure that, the story, again, I came into this space wanting to make an impact and use it as a tool. But, the most effective way to be able to do that is also make sure you have a good foundation, and great bourbon was our foundation.
Yeah, you let the bourbon do the talking, right? All right.
And we didn't have to. I didn't have to go out there and try to toot my horn and tell you this. And plus, you can't be called Good Trouble and not be good. So, you play a lot of risk there, right? But never had to think about that. I just knew that our job was to go out there and show up in the world. And this is something my mom has always said, just go be you and be good and, give 110% in everything that you do. And so the work ethic is, really showing up in the bourbon.
I love it. I know that the bourbon is just a small sliver of the big picture of everything you have going on. Can you tell me about some of the other outlets you have going on? I think you have a jewelry line.
Everything is around Good Trouble. So if you think about the holding company being Good Trouble, and then how we are looking at it about just telling stories of people who are change makers and troublemakers, and using those stories to empower people and inspire people. And then the jewelry line came about simply because I wanted to talk to a broader audience about what Good Trouble is and social activism. And I'm not able to talk to young men and women at bourbon. And so the jewelry was a way to inspire. So it becomes this badge of courage. That's what we really want, is people to wear it and understand that they are empowered to go out there and do good things in the world. So that was really why I ventured into sort of the jewelry space, because I can message to a younger audience. When I'm out speaking at events, it's not about bourbon. Very rare. Sometimes it might just exclusively talking about bourbon. I'm talking about the platform of what Good Trouble means and what it could mean to you. And so that's why, we look at this umbrella idea of bourbon is just one element. When we get people together, we do these salons, for instance, bringing people together. We have what's called a Stirring Up Good Trouble game, where even our coasters, where there are questions, because we want to inspire people to start thinking about what it is.
Yeah.
And right? It's like, what does good trouble mean to you? Or what is the world calling you to do right now? And sitting around with diverse groups of people. And again, I'm always certain at coming together, and we just sit and chat. We'll find we have more in common. And I'm going to keep fighting for that, and if we keep just depositing the good, and we can fight it. I always say the normal state of things is good anyway. So even right now in what's happening in the world, it might feel like despair. How do we help people think about what they can do? So that's really what this mission is about, is storytelling, experiences. One of the questions that I ask now, I can't wait to invite you to one of our experiences. Why not you is a question I ask. Why not you?
That is a great question.
It's an amazing question as we sit back and look at the world and the things that we might want to do. Yes, it could be you. Yes, you can do it. And so you mentioned, what else? Yes, what else I do? I'm a trustee for the PGA Foundation. And so I actually have a golf line, believe it or not, called Good Trouble. But the Good Trouble there is simply this. I think all young men and women should be out there playing golf. And in that space, it's another place where we build relationships, and it's efficient. And, when you think about someone who say, oh, I play chess, in a nanosecond, you think, oh, he's either bright, right? If I play golf, I know in those moments the biases go away in a nanosecond, and you're going to think something else. So the golf space is really ideal because it does bring people together. It is a place where relationships develop. When you're gonna we love to sit down and eat, right, and break bread, but think about what happens in 4 hours, and it's for families. That's good trouble. And so just finding ways to bring people together for good is really what this is all about.
Tell me about some of the programs that Good Trouble supports and the philanthropy efforts you're involved in, because I know there's many.
Yes, thank you. We do have an impact report, and I'm very thrilled and honored. Every bottle that we sell contributes to the Be Good, Do Good to Shine Your Light Foundation.
Wow.
And so we support First Tee, we support the PGA. I have fellows every year that come into Charleston, South Carolina, and they teach golf and STEM over the summer. I just joined the board of Future Founders, which is one of the most diverse group of entrepreneurs, and they're just amazing talent from all over the country. We just find ways to continue to support, and we look at it. We're doing some work with Chicago State. In Chicago as well, they have a golf program. I'm thrilled that I was able to make sure that every student there who had never been fitted for golf clubs have been fitted for golf clubs. So I think when you see that there's a need or there's someone you can help, you just figure out a way to go and help. But a lot of the work that I do is in golf, because I do think it's a great way of leveling the playing field.
Do you golf?
I absolutely do. I'm not very good at it. So I always tell people, just because it's the only sport, by the way, if somebody says I play golf, the next sentence is generally not very good. Yeah. No other sport, whether it's tennis, basketball, no one has apologies other than for golf. And I tell people, just because I'm a member, a trustee for the PA doesn't mean my game matches it. But I had to come into this and learn how beautiful the sport is and what it can do for communities. I'd rather see my kids, right, on a golf course for hours than other places. Right. And I talk to parents about the fact that there's scholarship money that goes unused, and then here's a great opportunity to get your kids' college education paid for and give them a talent that's going to give them a leg up or leverage them in their professional business lives. And I know more people who say the game of golf and being able to be invited in because of the golf space has the most impact on their careers. And I've seen it, and that's what I hope that we can do and we continue to do.
I need to get my boys into golf.
Please do. There's First Tee, there's a PGA Junior League. We do also PGA Hope is one of our pillars, helping veterans. We also have, of course, PGA Works, which works to create more diversity in the sport. But anyone listening, truly get your kids into it. I recognize that there's a gap between low cost of entry for sports like baseball and basketball and all that. But, there's always a way to find the resources, and there are programs like First Tee and PGA that can help close that gap. So when someone says, I want my boys to play and they're worried about the cost, don't. There are resources out there, and I've seen it happen.
Because of you. Listen, we have St. Patrick's Day coming up, right? That's in a couple of days, next week, whatever. I know you've put together for us a fun cocktail with Good Trouble bourbon. Can we talk about that?
Absolutely. The one thing that when you were telling me that this was going to air around that time, St. Patty's Day is such an important holiday for Chicago. But what it also represents is
because you dye the river green.
We dye the river green.
I forgot about that. Yeah.
Yes. Well, this is called the Emerald Rebellion. But, the other part of this is that it's a celebration of immigrants in our country. And so I really wanted to honor the Irish and all the folks, and the fact that that's just one other group who helped build America. And Good Trouble is all about supporting anyone out there. And so it was an honor to sort of build something and create this cocktail around another immigrant group who is out there being a part of this American story.
I love it. And this cocktail has 2 ounces of Good Trouble bourbon, half an ounce of Irish herbal liquor, half an ounce fresh lemon, half an ounce honey syrup, 2 dashes of orange bitters, and my personal favorite, the torched rosemary garnish. That adds such an effervescence at the end. I love that. And you can pair that with rosemary lamb sliders, Irish cheddar and apple crostini, and Guinness braised short ribs. Oh, and dark chocolate truffles for dessert. This sounds amazing, Dee.
You know what? We always love to make sure that people understand the pairings with bourbon. I think it's just another way that people could enjoy it. I hope that one day we start seeing more bourbon on the table than just bottles of wine, right?
That's right.
But yes, and so there's so many amazing ways I cook with it. Obviously I have a lot of fun. My latest one beyond this cocktail, I recently created something called The Truth. And I say that we need a little more truth in this world. And it's very simple: half ounce lemon juice, 3/4 ounces of maple syrup, and little bitters with 2 ounces of Good Trouble. And then I burn a cinnamon stick with a little lemon well, and it is phenomenal.
Sounds like a party to me.
It's a party for sure. And but again, the cocktails connect us, and again, it's my honor to sort of think about, Chicago. I said, courage is green, right? And the river is green. So when I see green, I want people to think of it as just being courageous to go out and do anything you want to do in the world.
I love it. Dee, thank you so much for your time tonight. And if you're listening, make sure you check out Good Trouble Bourbon. Hottest new bourbon out there.
Thank you so very much. It's been my honor to be with you.
And that brings us to our ingredient of the week. And this week, it's corn. You can't talk bourbon without talking about corn, the backbone of every bourbon mash bill. By law, bourbon must be made from at least 51% corn, and that corn is responsible for bourbon's signature sweetness, body, and warmth. Historically, corn was abundant and affordable in early America, making it the grain of choice for frontier distillers. Today, it remains essential, not just agriculturally, but symbolically. Corn connects bourbon to American farming, rural economies, and generational craftsmanship. In many ways, corn is humble, but powerful, much like the stories behind the most meaningful brands. Corn is one of those ingredients, though, that is super versatile. One way that I don't think people use it enough is using a fresh corn broth. Stick with me here. So when you have corn on the cob, don't just toss the cobs. Simmer corn cobs, onion, garlic, bay leaf, and peppercorns to make a naturally sweet golden broth. You can use that in risottos, chowders, seafood stews, or even to cook rice for extra depth. Now, a restaurant trick here, a corn puree. Blend fresh corn kernels with a little cream or butter, then strain it for a silky texture. You can use this as a base under seafood like scallops and shrimp, or a swipe under some roasted chicken or pork, or a luxe alternative to mashed potatoes. You can use corn in savory baking, and not just cornbread, but in cornmeal biscuits with honey butter, corn muffins with cheddar herbs or jalapeno, or cornmeal crusts for quiche or a tomato tart, right? And then charred corn as a flavor builder. You grill or char the corn until smoky, then cut it off the cob. Add that to some pasta with garlic, chili flakes, and olive oil, or salads with tomatoes, fetas, and herbs. Obviously, the go-to is usually creamed corn. I love that too. And you got to forget the canned version. Fresh corn simmered with shallots, cream, and a touch of nutmeg. It's a game changer. You can upgrade it by adding some crab or lobster, Parmesan and black pepper, or fresh thyme or chives. Okay, those are great corn ideas, I think, Ryan.
No, very much so. You get a lot of potential out of that. And, I mean, these are for sure some suggestions I'm going to have to try out on my end.
Okay.
Apart from just eating fresh corn as it stands.
Right. That's the basic way, right? I'm trying to elevate you here, Pagano.
Amen to that.
You're so funny. Okay, thank you for listening to Culinary Confidential with Christina Cates, Sunday nights at 9 p.m. on AM 970 The Answer. Thank you to my guest, Dee Robinson, CEO of Robinson Hill Incorporated and founder of Good Trouble Bourbon. What an incredible honor it was to share the hour with her. Good Trouble Bourbon isn't just part of the bourbon boom, it's part of a bigger movement redefining who gets to lead, create, and be heard in American spirits. Tune in next week for the St. Patrick's Day episode. I'll be joined by Sean Daly, founder of Dingle Crystal in Ireland. He's one of the last master crystal cutters left in the country, and we're shining a light on tradition, artistry, and modern design with old world technique. But that is the show for tonight. Thanks for listening and have a great night.
The preceding program is sponsored by Shake It Off Live, LLC.